Know if that's going to drive the answer of whether or not the RT is a good thing and what else we should be considering.
Except
Um,
Kevin seemed to be conflating those.
yeah, I don't see them as conflated as all at all.
All right. Thank
So
you.
I think I don't want I understand that issue. Those are two totally different things. I don't know that we need to address that as part of this committee.
All right. Well, we can talk about that as we pull our data together for the report. I'm just giving feedback on what we heard. Mary's comment was with regard to the senior means tested exemption. She's been on the select board a while and she remembers when it first went into effect. That actually may have preceded her participation on the select board, but she does remember when it went into effect. And she said, we were hopeful that more people would benefit from the senior means tested exemption. And what we learned from an email exchange with Meredith is that really it's only about 40 households that have been able to take advantage of it, in part, as we've discussed previously, because the asset limit for Concord's senior means tested exemption is rather low. It's 275,000. And so she seemed to indicate she'd be open to changing that asset limit. Not necessarily ours to recommend, but we can provide data from other towns that have senior means tested exemptions of their own. And there's a distribution that goes beyond what we currently have as the asset limit. So those were the two comments from the select board people. Then we had two citizens, two residents stand up. One gentleman stood up to lament the fact that the RTE is complicated and poorly understood by most people in town, or at least that was his opinion. And I think it jives with experiences we've had with our own interviews with folks. And then the other comment from a resident was disappointment with the fact that the select board adopted the RTE allegedly without a lot of public discussion. And it's true that some of the other tax relief programs require both the select board and a town meeting discussion before they can be adopted, whereas the RTE legislation only indicates that the select board would have to pass on it. So anyway, those were the comments that we received. It was a very useful discussion, I thought. In the days following the presentation, Dakota Antelman, the kind of town beat reporter from the Concord Bridge, called me and wanted to follow up on some of the details for an article that he's preparing that will appear not tomorrow, but either next week or the week after, talking about the presentation, talking about the RTE, and in particular, talking about the survey.
Oh, good.
So
Did he ask in particular?
Basically just followed up on a number of things that we had presented. One comment that he made, which I thought was interesting, was what does the task force think about the fact that as additional developments go into are built, thinking about MCI in particular and what might be built there, the percentage of renters, which we say is 28% of total housing units, is likely to go up. And so an even larger percentage of the town's residents will not benefit from something called the RTE because they are renters. And did we have an opinion on that? And I said, at the moment, no, but it's certainly a point worth noting. So I think that was the most interesting of his independent comments to me. He is aware of the League of Women Voters. Oh, the other thing he said, he picked up on the fact that we said real estate agents don't talk about the RTE. And he thought that was interesting. And, you know, what was my take on it? I said, look, there's a lot of room for improving communication around what the RTE is and who it benefits. And real estate agents, like others in town, could probably benefit from more information. So that's my feedback on the select board presentation. I did want to just give an additional update. I attended the chair's breakfast this past yesterday, Wednesday morning. And there are two things happening that I thought we should take note of. One, Rich, I heard you mention this, the town governance training that's happening Saturday morning, is happening from 9 to 10:30. The timing is such that if people have other things on their agenda for Saturday morning, they ought to be able to do both. So I will certainly attend. I think there are a number of things I still don't understand about open meeting laws and the best way to proceed as we start to write our report. So I'd like to attend the training, but everybody is welcome. Ellen, you had an exchange and discerned that there will be a recording of the main training put on the town's website at some point. So that's good. The other point of note is that the annual rate hearing, property tax rate hearing discussion, or hearing rather, takes place on November 17. And Mark Howell specifically told me that they tend to get a lot of feedback from citizens, from residents about the RTE at that rate hearing. And so, again, I would encourage all of us to attend. That's the select board meeting on Monday evening, the 17th.
Well, Lynn and Ellen, thank you for representing the committee. I thought you did a great job, as I sent in the email. I thought it was very clear and laid out where we were headed. So thank you. One comment that Cam made that I thought was interesting was about income on the asset value or
Yeah.
total assets that people have.
Yeah.
I don't think we should ask that. I don't think we need, I think it'll, as someone mentioned, I think will reduce our response rate so much. And I don't think it's needed if we're getting unearned or total income, because that implicitly has assets. So I, given that that's like asking for a bit more information, I probably wouldn't ask for it. One thing that I thought was interesting that Cam highlighted was that if we look at the towns that have adopted the RTE that are not more kind of quote vacation towns, Vineyard, Nantucket, Cape, that the income spread between homeowners and renters wasn't as great as it is in Concord, i.e., such a high percentage of those who are relatively housing cost constrained aren't renters in those other towns. So if we take Concord as an example, roughly half of Concord's quote housing constrained people, according to the Housing Production Survey, I believe, are renters who didn't benefit from this clearly. Maybe half of them did, and that would represent something like less than 14% of the total population, yet 88% of the population or of homeowners in Concord benefited from it. So I think we're beginning to see more and more. I think that point that Cam was making kind of explains why the RTE may work well in some areas where the income distribution is tighter between renters and owners. But given that renters are excluded from the RTE, as we know, it's not achieving what we wanted to achieve because it's not hitting half of the people who are in need, but rather is giving money to a lot of people, multiples of people who aren't. So I thought that was an interesting point that Cam made that speaks to the effectiveness, i.e. it's not that effective, and the efficiency, i.e. it's giving money to a lot of people who don't need it, of the RTE. So I thought that was an interesting comment.
That's one reason there's a survey there, because I don't think we can conclude, we really don't know the number. I mean, it's going to be, with 89% of houses under the break even, and certainly not 80%, 89% of people are low income, you're going to have a spillover. But I think we have to wait to see what the survey says to say that definitively. I think another thing interesting is the households that get income, that quote unquote are high income, but get the RTE that don't deserve it. It's the number of houses, but also it'd be interesting if we could figure out roughly the RTE, the tax forgiven, the tax benefit dollars.
Yeah. No, I agree with you. I think I'm beginning to more this 14% of rent, half of our people who are housing cost constrained are renters. And this certainly doesn't help them, likely hurts a good portion of them.
Yeah, I'm not sure, John. I think it might be that half of renters are housing or poor.
No, it's of our 28% of people in Concord who are housing cost constrained, half of them are renters.
28% are renters.
No. Well, that's true
No.
too. But half of our people who are housing cost constrained in Concord are renters, according to the Housing Production Survey.
I'm not
Okay,
sure.
but we're
how
gonna
far-
find this information out for Concord.
No, that
via
was
the
for
survey.
Concord.
But, well, hopefully we can get the data from the ACS updated for Concord and the 10 towns, which would be
I
really
guess my
helpful.
question is what data do, I mean, if this is Concord data on the Housing Production Survey that talks about the fact that half of our people who are housing cost constrained are renters, I mean, that's Concord data.
It's probably, I don't want to quote a number, but it's definitely concentrated in the renters.
I mean, the number's in there. It's
The percentage of
14%.
renters who are cost constrained is much
It's-
higher than
Mhm.
the percentage of homeowners.
The number's in that survey. I'm not, it is in that survey.
Yeah,
It
it
is
is.
there. I guess my point is, what I found
don't wanna
interesting
throw it
about
around
Cam's
like a
comment
ball.
was that that explains why such a large portion of our population is being helped by the RTE that is in need. It's because the income distribution between owners and renters is so broad within Concord versus some of these other municipalities that adopted it.
I don't understand that comment. And
So
I'm not-
if renters and owner, if I owned a property, let's just say everyone earned the same amount of money, that were renters or owners, and the renters weren't benefiting, right? But only 10% of people needed to benefit, then the percentage of people, I'm not explaining this well, sorry. Um, because renters are an enriched poor population within Concord, right? When we do something that doesn't help and likely hurts a good portion of the renters, then that's going to disproportionately impact poorer people.
I understand that part. What I don't understand is the notion of income distribution of renters versus of homeowners. I don't think we have data that
If
supports
if
that.
the distribution were the same, then you wouldn't see such a high proportion of housing cost constrained people being renters. It's because of the relative distribution. That's why it's happening.
Well, I don't think we know the income distribution of renters versus homeowners. Oh, Shannon.
No, what we know is that
Oh.
what we know is that half of renters are housing cost constrained. That's from the
Right, so
Housing
the
Production
renters,
Survey.
one of the things that the production plan says, which is that under 44, the renters are under 44 or over 70. And homeowners in the middle of that, 40 to 69, almost all of those are homeowners. Right, so that, it might be that low-income seniors and low-income young people tend to be renters. But I think it's danger. We will find out income distribution, whether it's ACS or the Concord survey. And, we all can, I think we've, tried to stay away from projecting.
No,
until
I'm
we
not
have some
projecting at all.
numbers.
I'm using data, Ellen, from the Housing Production Survey.
No,
I'm not projecting at all. That's data that half of our residents in Concord who are housing cost constrained are renters. I'm not projecting. And the RTE does not help them and likely hurts them.
I agree with all of that. It was the comparison to other towns where I'm not sure.
Yeah, right.
It's factual. That's a factual thing. If your income between owners and renters is tighter, then the RTE is not gonna hurt them as much, not gonna hurt the renters as much. That's a mathematical thing.
mhm.
I understand the math. I don't know that that's what is happening in a town like Brookline, for instance.
Well, I mean, the income distribution in Concord relative to these other towns is broader.
Remains to be seen in my mind. I don't know that we have those data for the other towns. Anyway, let's agree to move on.
Okay, then the next is we've got a presentation. Let me just see if I can get this. So the first Friday, I'll try to share this. Actually, am I sharing?
I don't see anything.
Okay, so this is how the first Friday is being advertised by the league. They're calling it Rethinking Tax Relief. And this is what they're putting a shorter version of the bridge, but that this is what they're putting in the communication to league members. That the league will hear from members of the Concord Tax Relief Evaluation Task Force, who will share their work on addressing housing costs, both homeowners and renters in town, including a survey to assess housing burden for residents, the effectiveness of the RTE and other tax programs to relieving housing costs and the role of housing solutions such as ADUs as a tool to help address our housing crisis. The reason for the latter is that the league is proposing as part of, First Friday discussion of cost burdens to look at other ways of having a more diverse housing stock. And so they're going to propose to have a Saturday all-day forum, hands-on, with builders, people who built ADUs, people who have installed ADUs, and other solutions to provide lower cost housing in town.
A question,
So-
do we think that this intro, this is for us, this description is our committee, what we're doing?
No, this is the first Friday and the first, except for the very last two, like the two lines, is what we are doing. And they were
Okay.
just saying to sell this, in essence, when I was trying to sell it to the town government committee, I positioned it as part of the league's concern about housing and the fact that they were looking to do a Saturday forum on accessory dwelling units. And I said, well, it fits into how do you think about housing costs in town?
I guess, I think that makes sense, as long as we're clear about what this
Yeah, so-
committee is responsible for.
So, yeah, so let me go. So I was thinking, and then Frank, that should be Rich. Sorry about that. Haven't seen this, so this is just Ellen's idea about how to do this, to basically repeat what we did for the select board. That if I started off, or however we started, first talk about our charge. What is the RTE? The impact, which is that slide that showed the dollars and percent change by value range, the perfect storm slide, the 2x2 income versus value, which is what we're doing in the survey, and then the survey and postcard. And then Lynn, if you can talk about other tools, other options, focusing on what are the gaps for the RTE in terms of it not taking into account income and not helping, in fact, hurting renters. And what does that mean? And then the other tools, we have the experience of other towns. And then Rich, if you could finish off with, just talking about housing
Yes,
solutions.
other ways to get
Yeah.
affordable housing.
So this is the thought, the vast majority of it obviously is what we're focused on. The goal is to hand out the survey, hand out the postcard, and you can even hand out hard copy survey at the forum to encourage completion of the survey.
Good.
Okay,
I'm adding that to my calendar and realize I've got to switch some things.
oh,
Yeah, I'm
What's the
happy.
Sorry, Ellen, what was the date of that? I can attend. I think I have
November
it on the
7th.
calendar.
November, it's November 7th, Friday, November 7th. I'm sorry, I didn't say the time. It's typically 10 to 11:30
Okay,
in the morning.
okay.
10 to 11:30, you had 10:30 to 12 on your.
Oh,
slide.
I don't, I'm sorry, I did this like literally between meetings today, so I apologize. But that we'll put this on the calendar and communicate it out to the team. Next meeting, which is the 30th. We'll put together, Lynn, Rich and me, put together a slide deck and review it with Diane Proctor.
Do they want slides? And,
Yes, definitely.
and by when do they want to see them?
I have to figure that out. Diane's focused on no kings, so she's not
Right.
thinking about this right now.
Right.
But yes, they will want slides. They'll, Carolyn Reed typically does the projections, so she'll project them. And there won't be any kind of pre-reads. The slides have to be super simple and self-explanatory.
Okay.
All right.
Thank you. we'll get organized on that for the next meeting.
Yes.
Realize, Ellen, we jumped right into chair's report without reviewing the draft minutes from our last meeting.
Oh, I am so sorry. So back to the beginning. Thank you, Lynn. Minutes from October 2nd. Do we have any changes on those minutes? They were distributed with the meeting packet.
I emailed that I misunderstood that Ellen had not done the interview with the renter, and so we had 19 interviews
19,
completed,
not
not
20.
20, and I emailed Lynn and Ellen earlier, when I
So
reviewed it.
the total of interviews at that time was 19, right, Shannon?
Is 19, correct? Sorry about that.
Okay.
So when you interview John, who's our slated 20th person, we'll get to 20, Ellen, but no rush.
I'll make that.
Thank you.
All right. Any other changes? Motion to approve the minutes as amended.
So
Second,
moved.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, passed. Thank you. Now we can go back to, I guess, finalizing the survey. Were there any comments from the survey? And basically what I sent around
Yes,
was the hard copy of the 2 surveys that would be sent out. Kristen, who's the person was helping me put this online, had a great idea, which is just do 2 separate surveys for hard copy, one for renters, one for homeowners. So it's a whole lot easier to follow. So those 2 surveys are easier to follow than going through online and clicking through.
when you go to the QR code URL, will there be a branching right there? If you're a renter, go here. If you're a homeowner, go there.
No, because online, you'll just pick, I think it's question 5, where it asks if you rent or if you own, or if you own and have a mortgage. So it's only the hard copy where you have to say, are you a renter, are you a homeowner, pick the right one. And
So
then
on the first page, the second paragraph, the last sentence that starts by law, Concord's RTE applies only to homeowners, does not consider household income, and may not provide benefit to renters, landlords, and does not is what.
does not, okay,
Does everyone agree?
yep.
Yes.
yes.
And so on both the renter and homeowner, that
Okay.
needs to be changed.
The other thing, and it's on the first page of the survey, is if we approve the postcard and I get it, well, let's say get it out the last week in October, we probably need to change the deadline, which right now is November 20th.
Yeah, I thought, so you and I had talked about December 19
Yeah,
being
so-
right before Christmas, and
No problem with people, did this right before Christmas, so people would have until Christmas to fill this out. And then January is focused on getting the results
doing the
put
analysis.
into Excel, and so we can evaluate them.
So as I walked through the survey myself, I flagged the places where I would need to look numbers up before I could complete
Yeah.
this easily. And I wonder if it's useful on the front page to say something like, to complete this survey, you will need to know, or you will need to have at the ready, household annual income, monthly or annual property taxes, monthly or annual mortgage payment, and monthly or annual insurance.
We don't ask for that
I wonder
detail.
if it's worth flagging that on the first page, so people could get that ready. Once you have that, it's super easy to do the survey.
I think, Lynn, that's a good thing to. My only concern with that is that it's gonna, I mean, I would immediately be like, nope, I'm done.
Yeah.
You want me to get up and go and get this information? I gotta go through my files versus I'm paging through this thing, doing the survey. I'm like, I think it's about X.
Well,
But
so I
remember,
also had a
Lynn-
question at the income question number 4 on the homeowner survey. What does total household income mean? Is it my AGI or is it something before that?
It's total income unearned and earned.
But from a tax return point of view, which number are you looking for?
Annual gross income. I mean, I don't, I
What's
can
the-
tell you what number I'd put in. I don't know. For me personally, I'm not that specific.
And maybe it doesn't matter. I don't know.
And Lynn, we eliminated the detail for the housing costs, it's just total housing costs, not all the detail. So you don't have to know.
I'm looking at the question about household income, and I wasn't sure what that meant.
I mean,
Yeah.
just to me, I think of it as earned and unearned, but
Well, yeah, clearly. Question.
But if we don't define it, we may get different answers from
do we
different
want to
people.
put parenthetically earned and unearned? I worry if we put AGI or something like that, people won't know. Earned and unearned kind of is like, okay, I get that concept.
I think that's fine.
Okay.
I mean, we're dealing with self-report where it's not gonna be great to begin with. It's gonna be directional.
Yeah,
But I think earned and unearned is clarifying. I think if you start saying net or gross or something, you'll lose people. And while I think it's useful to tell people what they might need to complete the survey, I think you'll steer people away from doing it if you tell them more than it'll help. Is it required to answer those questions or can you skip
Yes.
them? It's required. So
That's
we'll be able to see really quickly if we did get a lot of incompletes because if it's required to answer them, you either answer or you drop the survey. And I'm hoping we'll be able to look as we open it and say, like, if we're getting a ton of incompletes at that question, we could decide to, like, I don't know what we would do about it, but like, you can't skip it. So
Well, I don't, the way the survey works, and it's just because it's not a very sophisticated survey software, it doesn't stop the survey then. It's just before you can hit the submit button, it tells you what you haven't answered. So I don't know if we're even gonna know what they didn't answer.
Okay, so you can't well, yeah, I mean, but you'll still get incomplete, right?
Right.
So
Yeah.
you'd say like people started it, but I guess it won't say their answers you're saying, but if we see a ton of people aren't filling it out, I guess, but I still think our end's gonna be high enough. The only thing is that people, if you can't supply that information comfortably, you might decide to not take it. But
Yeah.
on paper, you also obviously can skip whatever you want because
Right, the required questions are only managed on the
required
online survey.
electronically,
In the
so
hard
we find
copy
it-
survey, you can answer
Yeah.
whatever you feel like. There's no
And
way to
we get a
stop.
lot more missingness, obviously, when we do hard copy. So, which is fine. We just have to deal with it.
When I think about data being skewed in surveys, I think about, is it likely to be skewed disproportional? It's all going to be skewed, but it's
Yeah.
going to be skewed one way or another disproportionately, i.e., is there reason to believe people as an example, I should say, i.e., e.g., if are people at lower income or higher income more likely or less likely to overstate, understate, or anything like that? I have no reason to believe that, so I think we're good with these estimates.
Yeah, I think people who don't have the information may just close out of the survey. That's all I'm saying.
Yeah, agreed.
Which is like, it is what it is. There's nothing you can do about that. And I think people on paper might skip some of the stuff they don't know, but it is what it is. I don't think it's systematic bias, to your point, John.
Yeah. Now, Shane, a question for you that I was thinking about before this. Are there any other demographic data that we should be gathering as part of this as we think about, trying to understand who we've heard from in Concord? I'll tell you the first thing that popped to my mind, and it's probably not right, but like political affiliation. I have no idea. Is that something that you capture in
We don't
something like
capture it
this?
on anything.
Nothing?
Well, in my world of work, like
Yeah.
we don't ever capture that.
Yeah.
Not that it's not interesting. I always say, like, what are we gonna do with that?
Yeah, totally.
Like
I guess, are there
80
other, I was using that as an example, by the
And
way.
like 80-something% of people voted for Joe Biden in the last election in Concord. So like, what are we looking for and getting that? Like, it's,
Yeah, I was sorry. I was using that as an example, not to say we should do that one,
yeah,
but
yeah,
are
but
there
like, what are
other?
interesting things? We systematically collect data because it's health related on age, race. We always collect race, even though the feds are interestingly doing things with it or trying to group it differently than we used to collect it. But because a lot of health disparities are by race, so we do age, race, gender systematically. But I don't think for these questions, any of the, I mean, like, obviously we have age already, but I don't know that like what we would do with it would help
Mhm.
us.
Yeah.
I
Okay. It
mean,
was just
for
something I was thinking
instance,
about.
we're not asking anything about professions or
Right.
job categories.
Yeah, sometimes we ask highest level of education on some of our
Education.
surveys too, because if we're doing any interventions that have to do with health literacy, we want to know.
We're gonna, I mean, I don't know what to do with that.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I just, there's not a research or like a research question here that seems like it would demand any of those things, and
Yeah.
so.
I'm just
It's
thinking
like-
through, are there any other ways we're gonna want to cut this data?
Well, one of the
Um,
things that
to
that,
anticipate
you know,
that.
in terms of people who are house poor, and we heard this in the survey, Shannon, if you've got somebody who's lived in the town a long, long time, you know, you might be getting, that could be an interesting kind of piece of information to correlate with, you know, they live in a fairly, you know, high value house and they've got relative low income because they've lived here forever. The house is
But we're
appreciated.
asking all those questions, right?
Yeah, I'm saying that in terms of information that we could, that, why did we ask that? I think it was that as well as, you know, whether you're thinking about moving out of town. So there's a lot of interesting stuff. And I think frankly, one of the most interesting questions is going to be the philosophy. Do you believe in redistributing tax
Mm.
for people of lower means? I think that's going to be, you know, a really interesting question, see how that correlates with just what the results are for that.
I had a little bit of a quibble with the wording on that, but unfortunately to
Okay.
get it more clear, I think it gets more complicated. But do you believe that residential property tax should be redistributed? It's really, do you believe that the responsibility to pay residential property taxes should be redistributed to benefit residents of low income? You see the difference? It's not
No,
the-
I must.
I
It's not
guess
the
I don't
tax,
see the difference either.
Who pays it?
And by the way, there is a question about whether it should be rather than whether it should be rate. Because implicitly that, I mean, there is a redistribution on a per capita basis within Concord on real estate already without an RTE.
I'm sorry, how, what?
Say that again? You get based on household size?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
What I pay for my kids to go to school here in Concord is higher than what other people pay, given where I live.
so it's a fairly, I think it's a simple question. It's broad, it's kind of open-ended, but I think it's meant to be kind of philosophy without getting really.
All right, hopefully people all
Picky.
understand it the
I
same
guess, I
way.
guess if we're gonna put a lot of weight on that question, I'd like to pause on it a bit more because I don't see how that question is going to answer our charter or really help inform it.
It speaks to the extent to which people support the policy of the RTE.
Well, what is the policy of the RTE?
The policy of the RTE is to shift the part of the responsibility to pay the property tax levy from the owners of low value homes to owners of high value homes.
And hurt renters in the and not help renters. So I mean the philosophy is broader. So I mean if we ask a question like, do you agree with redistributing income or something? I mean everyone's gonna say yeah.
No.
Or something like I mean we do that implicitly in our income taxes, we're doing it in our household taxes. So if we're gonna spend a lot of, if this question is gonna drive much of our answer at all, I want to pause on it because I'm not sure it should.
Well, the time for pausing is over. We need to finalize this. So
Well, do you think that, well, then maybe explain to me how this will answer whether the RTE is achieving its objectives?
the question is whether people support the RTE. as
And
a
I
policy.
had at least 2 interviews where people volunteered without me asking. I don't mind, you know, helping through the tax system. residential
I was-
tax system.
I think
Those
that's a
are
great-
Let him
all-
finish the sentence.
I was just gonna say, Rich, I was analyzing the data today and it's more than your 2. So it's
Right.
actually one of the findings that I would say that I'm working on the wording for that I was doing
Right.
today is that people broadly, not RTE specifically, I think the way I have the wording written right now, looking at them, which is not final, but I haven't sent it because I'm still working on it, but is there's an overall positive sentiment for increasing affordability and economic diversity. Like people willingly were interested in ways to increase affordability and economic diversity. That is not the same as support for the RTE, but I think those things could be, if you had no support, for example, for increasing affordability or economic diversity, you would expect that you would have also potentially no support for the RTE. So I think they're different things, but I think it is worthwhile to capture both. I would think that it would be a precursor to any tax redistribution mechanism or any affordability mechanism that a swath of the population supports the concept of affordability and
Yeah.
economic diversity broadly. That's my vision, but I'm just saying from the data, it's more than, I didn't mean to interrupt you, but it's more than your 2 interviews. There were plenty of others where people voluntarily suggested, whether they agreed with the RTE or not, that they were broadly in support of some type of looking at or policy to make things more affordable. But I don't
That's a
think that,
much broader sentiment than.
Yes.
I know, and that's what I'm telling you. That's what I believe is in the findings. I don't.
And that's
believe-
my point. That is exactly my point, Shannon, that if we start saying things about, if people believe that redistribution of wealth is a good thing, then that means that maybe the RTE might be a good thing. I don't think we can correlate those at all. And therefore I don't think that this question can be a main driver of our conclusions from our findings. That's what I'm reacting to.
Is
Because
it-
I think
we have
you'll
a
get a
separate
lot of
question.
people who say affordable housing is an important thing. A lot of people will say redistribution of wealth is an important thing. I agree with both those things, and I think the RTE is a horrible thing.
And I think that's why we have a separate question that asks for support for the RTE, because we'll be able to see whether those things are related or not, right? Because
We
have
don't
questions.
have a question about how do you feel about increasing affordability in town, housing
Right, we
affordability.
have the income redistribution question.
We
Yeah,
do not.
that's-
I think
First
we
part,
have
tax-
to ask that, because if we were to adopt, it was in section 15, when, where we benefit the renters, the expensive homes are actually gonna pay more
Yeah, yeah,
than they're doing now.
yeah, it's true. That's a
Because
big
we
if
got a
though.
whole lot
Rich, I'll tell
more
you what, if we figure out a way that
places
we
to-
can get broad renter adoption and get them largely excluded from the RTE, and we can point to an example of a town that's adopted it and done it effectively, then my perspective on this thing is shifted completely. The renters are the issue.
Well, I mean, I don't think renters are the only issue.
Well, they're half of our, no, they're aren't our
Bought
only
into
issue,
this
but when
town
they're half of our
years
cost
ago.
constrained.
Can we
With-
listen to each
conversation.
other, please?
Yep,
Let
sorry, go ahead,
Rich
Rich.
finish, John.
No,
Well, I was gonna
just
say, when they're
think that-
half of our cost constrained people, they may not be our answer, but when they're not helped and likely hurt, that certainly shows a lot of what the answer is.
No, and I'm just saying, I don't think we should just look at the renters. There are a lot of people who bought into this town at a time when it was more affordable and whose incomes have not gone on up, and it is an issue.
I agree with you,
in
Rich.
the
I agree with
interest
you. I just
of
am not
it-
convinced at all that the
Folks,
RTE is the most effective way of
It's
doing
8
it.
o'clock, and we have 2 things we absolutely have to get done today. One is the RTE explainer, and the other is the postcard. I think there's a lot. Let's get the survey results. It's so clear that renters are a major gap in the RTE that we need to evaluate and quantify. I mean, I don't think anybody disputes that that's the Achilles heel. That's a real problem with the RTE.
But that's not the point of question 17 on the homeowner.
But, question 17 to me is kind of a philosophy of, do you believe in redistributing the benefit households of lower means? And they could be, if you can agree with that. And
I
then
agree with that
still, as
question,
John
and
is
I
saying,
don't agree with the
let me
RTE.
finish, John, then oppose the RTE because many low-income households are renters.
What we
So
do with the answer to that
if we
question.
collect the information, let's then just see what we do with it.
No, Alan, that's my point, is that I'm not sure what we do with that information. I mean, well, we can use it. I guess I'm reacting to Ellen. What my reaction is when you said that you think this is a critical question. I
Okay,
actually don't
apologize.
see it as a
I
critical
meant it
question.
would be an interesting question, not that it's gonna pose. Okay, I take that back. It's to me an interesting question, but it's certainly the critical one to me is the income and the value. Those are the critical ones. That's what I want. And everything else is kind of icing. We added that question very much at the last minute. Saying, why don't we ask directly how people feel about real estate, property tax redistribution?
John,
We'll
would
see.
you be more comfortable if 17 were dropped and we leave 18? So people can express an opinion about the RTE in their own words?
I think that that is more appropriate. And with the caveat, obviously, that people don't understand it that well. But I'd be curious to see what the general perspective on the RTE is, because again, as I said, I think most people in Concord are going to say yes, affordable housing is something. Income
That's
distribution.
not what the question is asking, John. It's not a question
Sorry.
about affordability.
Isn't
No, sorry. I was
16
saying that 16 is
17 asks, do you like the RTE? Do you think the RTE as a
Yeah.
tool of redistribution, do you
Yeah.
agree with it or not?
I
That's
like
it.
that one.
So 15 says, I mean, unless I'm looking at the wrong thing, what is your level of support for the RTE, right? That's question 15 on the homeowner survey on the PDF. And I think that's, people could say they strongly oppose that. And then 2 questions later on 17, they could say, do you believe that residential property tax should be redistributed to benefit residents of low income? They could strongly agree it should be redistributed, but disagree that the RT is the way to do it, right? And I guess that's
Janet,
what I'm.
Thank you for pointing that out, because honestly, aren't 17 and 18 redundant with 15 and 16?
I don't understand. 18
For
is
heavens,
and did respond.
You know, guys, these have already been coded. They're in hard copy unless it's a terrible question. I
Yeah.
wonder if we, if it's worth.
I think they're-
I'm
rewriting.
good. I'm good. I'm good.
Different.
I'm
Okay,
good.
Okay.
that's good.
It's just the way we put on the responses. I'm good with where we are.
Let's see what we get. And if it doesn't make sense, we won't use it.
Yeah, and I think they're
Diana
different,
knows
and I
this.
think it looks good the way it is.
All right, there's
So if we could
typos.
move on
Can
to the
we get the
RTE
type-
explainer.
Can we get the typos cleaned up, please? Question 4, B, there needs to be a $sign before 25. And I don't, when we
Uh-oh.
originally did this and we had K as a symbol for 1,000, I think that's sloppy. I think we should have apostrophe and 3 zeros for 1,000. And then on question 6, we have a typo under C there, on the homeowner one. This is the approximate assessed value of the residence. There are $2 signs, one of which should be deleted. Sorry to be picky, but those are typos.
Lynn, thank you. I love that.
Do you see those, Ellen?
I do.
Okay.
Okay, the RT, here we go, the RTE explainer.
I think it's good. I'm
Any
comfortable.
changes anywhere in this?
No.
It's simple, it's straightforward.
Good, I think they're very good. And if that had been handed out when we did the RTE, maybe there wouldn't be so many people who didn't understand
Okay, so this would be listed at the end of the question after we say thank you. You know, saying for more information, please click on the QR code or scan the QR code or click on the, or click on the, or enter the URL, which will be a shortened called tiny URL that we'd be using.
And that'll be at the end of both of the surveys.
Both hard copy surveys and the online survey.
Okay. All right, postcard.
Okay, postcard next. Okay,
Ellen, I
this is
thought
what the
your review of the
postcard,
first draft
just
was
remind you,
great because I
this
made the
is
same
the
comments.
layout of the postcard. The front has on the top, it's a nice layout that's got the town seal, the QR code and tiny URL with kind of call to action, please fill out the survey, and then an explanation on the second page where the address appears.
Can you bring it up on the screen, Ellen?
Oh, I'm sorry, I thought,
Right now, I just see the explainer.
um, okay, there is the postcard. You
Yep,
can see this
perfect.
is the layout. This is Donna McIntosh, who is our communications manager for town, who came up with the graphics for this.
And does this now incorporate the feedback that Wendy gave you?
No, because this, Wendy's on vacation. This, I'm just showing you, this is the layout.
Okay,
The words are on the second, and the second document I'm going to share you. I just want to show you, this was the layout. It's a nice graphic with good kind of eye-catching color on the front. And then the second page is a half a page next to the address. And this is being sent to all residents in town, including post office boxes. So it actually would go to people who actually maybe don't live in town right now.
And Ellen, the text is a little bit different from this. Is that correct?
Yes, here's the, hold on.
Yeah.
Here's the text. So here are the two alternatives of text. And I'm sorry, Donna's on vacation, so there's no way I could mock this up.
that's all right.
It's all
Okay,
good.
so the
Thank you for
first-
driving this, Ellen.
So the first, can you see the two alternatives? Oh, no.
No, right
Oh,
now I see the.
sorry.
marker.
I have to unshare and then reshare each time. Try this again. Okay. There. Okay, so this is first option for the front. The first one hits you over the head with property taxes. The second one is broader to motivate renters. So the first one, property taxes impact you, share your opinion. That's in big letters at the top. And then help us understand how housing costs affect you, and then our name, the Tax Relief Evaluation Task Force. The second, share your opinions about the cost of living in Concord, including property taxes and rent. We want to hear from you and our name. So which do we want? Given which one we want, any edits on the words? I had a lot of feedback, but basically these were the two. First, hit your, focus on property tax, and the second be broader so that renters answer the questions too.
I prefer the second for just that reason.
Yeah, that was my reaction. The second would be a little more
Okay.
inclusive.
Yeah, I agree. I
Good.
definitely like the second one. I think they look great. I think the second one looks great. And we'll
Yeah,
try
the
to
second
do
one I think
broad
is a whole lot.
uptake.
And then the back, super simple. This is a lot simpler than what was in the mock-up that you just saw. It is simply calling all owners, condo owners, and renters. Let me just make this bigger.
Instead
Sorry.
of all responses will be treated anonymously, can we just say all responses will be anonymous?
Yep, agreed.
Shannon, wasn't this your wording?
So Carlin pointed out that technically, and she's right, annoyingly, I mean, like correctly, but like, it's like annoying that, I mean, she is right, that because we don't know how many people we're gonna get in the survey, and because we're asking for people's income, their property value, and their age, a bunch of information, you could identify someone. Like you could, in theory, right?
No,
And so yeah. If you have
I'm
someone.
good. I'm good leaving it as treated anonymously. Lynn, are you?
I just think it's wordy.
I
It is
agree with
wordy
you,
because
but I
technically-
understand what you're
I
saying,
mean,
Shannon.
I actually feel like the anonymous thing was fine. This is like a research technicality, technically, and this was her ad. Technically, this is correct. I
Yeah.
agree that given that we are not going through institutional review board, that we could probably get away with that, that it's anonymous, but she pointed out that technically it could be
Okay.
identified.
This is
So I
another
thought-
way to do it. Please complete our 10-minute anonymous survey.
Yeah, I think that's
Yeah,
fine.
there you go.
That works too.
Doesn't-
I'm,
One small thing, should we distinguish between homeowners and condo owners? I personally would just say homeowners and renters, because I think people who own condos
Well-
probably consider it their home.
Yeah, I think people think of a home as a single family.
So in one document we had including condos. I mean, to me, it's homeowners and renters, if that's fine, great. Do you think people would think if they lived in Concord Green that they're homeowner?
Yeah, if they own it.
Yeah, but
I mean, I don't care that much, or
I don't
I
know.
honestly don't think it's gonna skew things. It just seems cleaner to me to say homeowners and renters.
I
But
agree.
if we think for some reason that's gonna exclude condo owners, we should include condo owners.
No, condos, that is your home. If
Yeah,
that's
exactly.
your
Condo's your
primary,
home.
if that's your primary residence, that's your home.
Okay, so
Exactly.
calling all homeowners and renters,
Exactly, yep.
okay? And then not even telling them what it's about, because I think it gets too wordy. And
Mhm.
then simply complete the survey online via the QR code or URL below, or via hard copy version available at the Council on Aging. And per your suggestion, John, I put the address, town libraries, or the townhouse.
Perfect.
Okay,
Is hard.
Any
copy-
changes to
is
this?
hard copy one word or two?
oh, I don't know. Can somebody look that up? I can't do that and share screen at the same time. I'll look this up.
I think it's 2 words.
2 words.
Is it? Okay, thanks.
2 words.
Okay.
I think it's good.
Done.
okay.
All right,
Approved with those amendments?
excellent. We now guest column on the bridge. Lynn, do you want to go over this? I
So,
can share it.
we've gone through several iterations. What you have before you meets our word count limit, which is 400. I could fiddle with the wording some more, but I'd like to hear your perspectives. This would go in as a guest column signed by Ellen and me on behalf of the task force.
I think it's fine. Says, you know, it sets the stage and it urges people to respond.
Is it taxable value of participating homes or assessed value?
Where,
The middle of the third paragraph. 144K was deducted last year from the assessed value. I
Yeah.
think
it's assessed, right?
Assessed
tax.
value.
Hmm. Oh, yeah, great clarification.
That's a good, hold on.
Also, the third from the bottom paragraph that begins with, "We have developed a townwide survey." The last sentence, I would say, should say, "The survey should take no more than 10 minutes and is completely anonymous."
Where is that? You want me to add that?
Third paragraph from the bottom at the very end of it, and to complete.
Oh, got it.
And completely anonymous. Yep, bingo.
All right, so I'll make those changes and we'll look at
I
it.
can just, okay.
And then I think we should send it in to Celeste. And she made it clear that they were the ones who would come up with a title for it, not us.
Yes,
But
they title everything.
I put something there just so we could see it.
Yeah, that's great.
All right. Good.
Next. I had Council on Aging in the survey. This was just ways that we were gonna, was this meant to be ways we were going to, publicize? So they're thinking about going to the Council on Aging, their lunch meetings, explain the survey, have a table to hand the survey out. Of course, many seniors are perfectly able to use QR codes and a URL, so they might decide to do
You're
it
working
online.
off a different version of the agenda than I think was final.
Oh, okay. Okay,
Yes,
so
we
that's
need
not
to
on
come up with a strategy for going to COA, but I don't think we have to talk about that.
Okay, so the other was, and this was an idea Lynn had, which I thought was awesome, was after we got the preliminary results in the survey, to have a public forum.
Yeah, my thinking was, once we know more about what the town is thinking, we ought to float some of those, what's the right word? Central themes that we're hearing from the
Yeah.
survey. Float those in a public forum. We can figure out how, when, where, why, later. But do that before we sit down to write our report. And maybe nobody.
Just out of curiosity, so is this to share the data from the survey,
Yeah.
share our running hypotheses, share
Yeah.
a draft version of the report?
No, I don't think we'll have a draft version. I was thinking of doing this like in February. I'm assuming that the survey ends just before Christmas. We will take January to pull the numbers together and build some breakdown tables. Maybe put some graphs together, and then we should present that somehow.
So present the data before our findings?
Yeah,
Yeah, and I think.
Do we need to commit to that now?
no, I just
No,
want.
no, this is an idea to float. That,
Yeah,
let's
yeah,
say
I think it's a
we,
good thing to keep it for us to think about. I think once we get the data, it'll be interesting to see what it says. And then we can figure out
Hopefully
how
we'll
we
have the
best share it.
ACS
yeah.
by then as well.
So Rich is saying if we have the ACS analysis as well, then we'll have a lot to talk about of the survey, which is self-reported, versus the ACS data, which,
I mean, maybe
Well,
John is right. Maybe, like, why bother doing that before we submit the report? Maybe we just put all of that analysis into the report and,
Yeah, I worry
I think
that if we
it's
share the
actually-
data, we're gonna have people drawing tons of conclusions from that data and going all sorts of different directions before we can say, look, we as a committee have seen this data, we've analyzed it, and here's our conclusion. Then other people can react to the data the way they want to, but at least we've had a chance to frame it because we will have spent more time with that data and thinking about this than anyone else.
I guess I think we should do it before we write the report for two reasons. One of which is there are a group of people in town who are gonna want to vent about this. And if we don't have something before we write the report, I think they're gonna claim, the process is flawed. And I think having, even if very few people show up, we can say, we did hear public comment beyond our meetings, which are, not many people are gonna show up for. And
Rich, I didn't hear one part you said you felt like people would feel like there was a flaw in the process. Why?
why? If we don't provide a public forum for comment, I'm generalizing from the experience I had with the 2229 Main Street Task Force. And the findings of that report, although we did recommend something, we had 2 public forums before we made a recommendation. And a lot of people got their concerns out, and some of them were reflected in the report. I just, we
Yeah.
know that the RTE has been condemned for not having been publicly processed, if you will. I think having one evening where we invite people and nobody comes, then fine, but I think it ought to be before we write the report. I think.
How about this? How about we wait till we get the data back and decide then?
right.
yeah,
Because we also could decide just to present data or the data that, I wouldn't say it's non-controversial, but the data we're confident in and not get into ones that we're, when you're trying to compare two different sets of data and you're not quite sure what the conclusions are.
Yeah, there's one other thing I'd like to see in the public forum if we do it, which is essentially walk people through Lynn's table of the various possibilities
Yeah.
for tax relief.
right.
Yep,
Yeah.
yes.
And
I
some
like that.
version of that,
When
I'm
people
gonna
don't
put
understand
together.
the RTE, I guarantee you that they have no idea.
Actually,
So
Rich,
one
I've
of
got a
the
que-
one of the goals
Go
of
ahead.
the first Friday, I think one of the interesting aspect is if, Lynn, you lead with, here's the gaps with the RTE. Renters, income, I mean, lots of gaps, and then talk about how other programs are addressed it or other towns. I mean, that Lexington didn't adopt the RTE, so that we're pretty upfront about, we're focusing on the RTE, we're doing the survey, but we also understand that there might be better tools in the toolbox.
Yep,
I think it's
Rich, maybe you know the
important.
answer to this question, or Ellen, of the people that that we think might qualify for some of the non-RTE, affordable housing tools we have in Concord. Do we have any sense for what percentage apply? I know we were talking about like 33 or 40 people applying for something. So I guess what I'm wondering about behind that question is, do we have good tools in place, and it's an education effort, so we need to get people to apply? I mean, it's a question. I have no idea. So of the
I'm
people
not sure the
who we think,
assessor has an idea either. So
Right.
we have two targeted things. One is the senior means tested exemption. And we know that the asset limit likely dissuades some people from applying because they won't be eligible. The other thing we have is the Hugh Cargill Tax Relief Fund, and that gives out about 60 grants to needy households each
Okay.
quarter.
okay, so on the 60 set, on the former, we just don't know what the denominator is. We know the numerator, not the
John,
denominator.
one way to look at it, we are getting tax filing status. And so the senior means test has different income levels for different tax filing status. So if we say the asset limit goes away, we actually will have a decent idea about the number of people based on our survey results that might qualify.
Hmm.
Because we don't know how many people are knocked out because of $275,000 cap on assets.
Or because they're over the senior circuit breaker for,
Well, we'll have,
yeah.
how do you file? What is your income? Does that make sense, John?
Yeah, no, yeah, I get it. What I'm pondering is there a way to capture data that would be informative for something else? But I don't want to conflate what we're trying to do. I was wondering if we should go back. I was going back to maybe it would be good to get assets because then we could test what you're talking about, Ellen, which is, ooh, maybe there are a bunch of people with 275 or 300 grand in assets who need this. So if we could adjust that threshold, we'd be better off. But I don't want to dilute our response rate, so better not to do that.
Doesn't 41C.5 eliminate the
It
asset?
does.
So, John, there is an alternative that has no asset cap.
Okay.
But it's only for the elders.
It's only for the elders. It doesn't help young renters. It's always a catch-22 and all these things.
So I'll come up with some kind of a graphic.
that would be great.
I agree with Rich that some part of public forum, like if you were going to write out a method section of what we did, I think having some place where we presented something to the public or like gave them an opportunity is really critical to buy in. I don't think we need to agenda set what data or what that is right now, but I think we should plan on that. And then I think as we get closer, we can decide how much control we want to keep the messaging around the results and how much we want to open up. But I think having a public session, or I think conversely, not having a public session is a risk that is bigger than the message getting out of our hands.
I mean, to be fair, we're sending a survey around to all households
Sure.
asking for people's feedback. So it's not like we're ignoring the public, but I think I agree with you, Shannon, providing an
Yeah.
opportunity for people to talk about it together, I think could be really rich, actually.
Yeah, and I
I
worry
agree.
on the
Let's
other
Let's wait
side,
till we
it's
get the
like-
data and then we can sort it.
Yeah, exactly. Like I think we don't need to agenda set, but I do think we should say having something that makes people feel like they could be listened to in maybe a non-anonymous way.
Yeah,
It is valuable potentially for any sort of buy-in. It also shows, I think it just gives a good goodwill on the half of our committee and on like getting people to be more engaged in the process, read the report, feel like we like ticked all the boxes. And I'm not saying we don't make it a meaningful discussion, but it also there are some things that should be done for process. So
I will say that late January, early February is a busy time in the town because that's
Yeah.
when public hearings are happening as we get ready for town meeting, but so be it.
That's the timing.
that timeline was not set by the select board based on our date of when they wanted our, that
Yeah,
wasn't set by
March,
us.
right.
So if they wanted a report in March, then we couldn't do much about that.
Yeah,
But
I mean, if
I
they
hear
push
you
it-
that we might not get a lot of people, but I think more important than the people we get is the offer we make in this
And
case.
we do that
Good point.
every 2 weeks with these open forums.
We
so
do.
should continue to do that.
And
The turnout's been
we
quite
have a
light.
lot of things, but I don't think it harms us to have one more. I think 2 is
Yeah.
overkill.
Doesn't
But
hurt,
Yeah.
doesn't hurt.
Yeah, I think we ought to ask Wendy too, when she does.
Yeah, so Wendy's next meeting,
Let's not,
put that on the
to Shannon's
agenda.
point, let's not over agendize this thing.
Okay.
Let's get the data and then
So-
figure it out.
That is all we've got in the agenda. We've got 5 minutes. Any other business people bring up before we go to public comment? So we have one member of the public. Would you like to make a comment? Scott, you have to introduce yourself, tell us where you live, and then comment away.
Good evening. This is Scott H. Gillis at 80 Alford Circle in Concord. Just 2 very quick things, but first I'd just like to say thank you to all you kind volunteers who are doing so much work to try to get this right. The first thought relates to the survey, and this may be too late, but often in income sections of surveys, there will be ranges and people can choose a range. And there's an option to say, I prefer not to answer this question. If the survey were drafted that way, then people who do not answer that question for a variety of reasons would not would still be included in the analysis. So that may be an academic question. It may be too late, but that's the common way I've seen income information requested in many, many surveys. The second question relates to the charge. I'd just like to know who the member of the assessor's office staff has been appointed as a non-voting member of this committee.
There isn't one to my knowledge. We have had liaison with the assessor herself. She came and presented to us at the beginning of our meetings. Ellen, you and a number of others went to their office and met with a number of people in the assessor's office. We also most recently sent them the RTE explainer that will accompany the survey to get the assessor's feedback on that draft document. So we continue to have an open working relationship with them, but there is not a non-voting person who regularly attends these meetings.
And you recognize that that was part of your charge from the select board. The charge said,
Yes.
quote, "A member of the assessor's office staff will be appointed as a non-voting member."
It's probably a question for Wendy, our select board.
Ellen, I
Person.
know you've gone back to Wendy and asked her about that.
Yeah, I can't remember verbatim, but in essence, this assessor staff is overworked. And when we've asked them questions, that require analysis, they tend to be really hesitant to spend the time. I think to ask them to spend this through 10 meetings would be difficult. So I believe the bottom line, I think Wendy was saying, it's in the charge, but it's unlikely to happen. I think that we've got, as Lynn said, a good relationship with the assessors board. When we need to ask questions, we can send them to, we get a response fairly quick. It's Meredith Stone, who's the assessor.
Yeah, she's terrific. As is Michael. I've found them to be terrific.
Oh, yeah.
Assessors board. I asked the question out of my my life's experience of being precise and accurate. And when someone doesn't follow their charge, they open themselves to criticism.
Yeah, fair point.
I'll predict for you that as much hard work as you're putting into the survey, there is likely to be people who claim that it's biased or it wasn't objectively worded. It's just the way of the world. So I thought from reading the charge, I thought there was such a person, and I was just curious to know who that was.
And by the way, the survey does ask for range of income, not what is your income.
But
Oh, it
doesn't
does.
have a, it doesn't have a, I prefer not to answer.
You
and-
didn't, and the reason why we were actually, is that
debated this.
income and house value are kind of the two crucial pieces of information that we can't get anywhere for every respondent. We can get income averages, we can get assessed value for every single address, but the two of them, which put together, really help us decide whether the RTE is reaching all the low-income folks, however we define low-income, and whether it's overshooting and giving a benefit to people who don't deserve it. Homeowners, I'm only talking about, because certainly renters are not included in the beneficiaries. In fact, they're being hurt by the RTE. So we need income and home assessed value, which is why they require questions. And there's not an option to say, I don't know, or don't want to
So
answer.
yeah, Ellen, I agree with you. And the trade-off we discussed, which I'm an academic health medicine researcher. And so we discussed the trade-off of requiring questions and then dealing with missingness regularly in surveys, although I'm fair, and to be fair, I'm not a survey expert by training, but and so it's kind of like, do you miss the whole survey by potentially forcing someone to answer a question that they don't want to answer, or do you allow for non-response and then they answer one of the two questions that you need as like a core part of the data that you're doing? And then if they do answer one of the two, how do you handle missingness? So do you impute the missingness? There are like 10 different statistical ways to deal with missingness, and it ends up that all of them are really, really messy, and half the time you end up throwing out a lot of those surveys anyway. And so I think what we decided as a committee, not being having a lot of support in doing statistical analysis, including folks from the assessor's office in the town, and not being all trained statisticians, we thought that requiring this question as a core component of the analysis, we're running the risk of a slightly lower response, but we won't have to deal with missingness as a statistical problem.
Yeah, just as a point, you're requiring it only of those who fill it out online. You are not requiring that.
There's no way to
We can't,
require it
yeah.
on a paper form. It is true.
No,
We could, unless we
understand.
just threw out anything that did not include it, right? If we dismissed
We
of
could.
anyone who did not fill it out and we labeled required on the online
Which
form.
we
on the
can
hard
do.
form.
We just can't make anyone
Yeah.
do it.
Okay, and wait, just what are the ranges? I'm glad to hear there are ranges.
Hold on.
That makes it a lot easier for people.
Yeah. The bigger ones are $1 million, right?
So, total household income, less than 25K,
Yeah.
25 to 50, 50 to 75, 75 to 100, 100 to 150, 150 to 200, 200 to 400, greater than 400.
Oh, that's great. I think the conversation earlier about people would have to go collect all that data and how do you define it and all of that. I think these ranges make it easier for people to answer that question.
Okay,
I agree.
great.
Point.
Thank you all very much.
No,
Scott,
thank
thank
you,
you
Scott.
so much for
Thank
your
you very
approach
much,
and
Scott.
asking the questions.
You're very welcome.
And for encouraging to get our information on our website. So
Ooh.
thank you for that from 2 weeks ago.
Oh, you're very welcome. I heard you mention institutional review boards,
Mhm.
and I just know from experience that you've got to do things right. You've got to be precise, all of those things. So
Absolutely. Oh, yes.
it's
This is,
just-
yes, that's my day job, dealing
Yep.
with the IRB.
Yep.
And so I think about it often, and also know that sometimes having to deal with, having to not deal with the IRB in some ways allows us to have a little bit more flexibility. You can still be precise and sometimes not go through a huge human subjects review, which really slows us down. So it's
Yes.
nice to have both, but I do try to keep that in mind.
Great. Well, thank you all very much.
All
Yeah,
right,
well, thank
Thank
you
you,
for your
Scott.
comments, Scott. All right, we done?
I think
Okay,
we're in. Motion to
Meeting
adjourn.
adjourned at 8:35. Thanks for staying a little later.